We're doing a little sink installation. In this case, we have two sinks, both of which are not plumb or level in the countertop, so what we're getting is some rocking. If you look, it rocks back and forth, which is something you don't want every time you're pulling the handle. Now the other sink has already been set and sealed, and you can see there it's nice and solid, and we only did that by using sealant. So what we want to show you today is how to do that if your sink doesn't fit perfectly. Otherwise it's pretty easy and straightforward, but in this case there's a few more irons in the fire. Right now you'll see that we have the sink marked off with masking tape. So we carefully measured this, so once we put the caulking on, we can put the sink right back where it belongs. There's two schools of thoughts. One is perfection and the other is good enough for government work. In this case we chose perfection, and any real true home improvement guru should do the same. Now here you see that RJ is building up the sink where it has low spots. So in order to have this sink fit right, you got to build it up. And an easy way to do this is with the caulk. So again, RJ is a careful worker and spends meticulous amounts of time to make sure that this sink has the proper silicone in place to take out some of the low spots on the sink. Now here you can see this is not an easy task. RJ is having to put a lot of force onto this caulking tube to get this done. If you have a gun, it could be easier done, but right now he's squirting out prodigious amounts of caulking in order to take up the low spots. Like we said, job worth doing is worth doing right.
This is good stuff.
Now here you can see RJ's continuing around the other side of the sink. One little caveat is we have a different type of silicone to finish this job off because we're using a cost-effective approach. So we're going to save that material for the back just in case the color doesn't match. This is especially important for people who are staying within a budget. If you work for the federal government, pay no means to this. Just continue to use whatever materials you need to at whatever cost.
Is that a video of the final product?
Now you can see that what we have here is caulking all the way around the sink. This is not the traditional way to caulk a sink. However, we're just three guys dealing with what we deal with, which is a sink that is not flush with the countertop. So you can see we have a higher amount of silicone over here and lower in the back. So this is not traditional, but we'll show you how we make it a pretty traditional installation and take the rocking out. All for a very economical price. Okay, so now we have the sink. It's been siliconed. RJ and James are carefully keeping the hoses out of the silicone. And they're carrying it over together. This is potentially a two-man job if you have this kind of situation. Again, the sink's already been marked. This makes it easy because you don't want to be moving the sink around with all the silicone on the bottom of it. Like we said before, this is not traditional.
How's this backside look, Jim?
Good, good, good. You're this way a little bit. There we go. Okay. No?
Let's see what we have. Okay, all right. Now if we just square it to where
We're doing a little bit of squaring. Afterwards, we'll show you how we get the excess silicone up in a real professional looking seal. Now we have a few low spots with silicone. What we're doing here is adding a little silicone in the traditional method to fill any gaps we might have, because you want to get a great seal. You don't want water leaking down from the sink. So you can see here RJ's doing just what you would do with a sink that fits in perfectly and is totally flush. We already have silicone on the inside of the sink. Now we're running around the outside to make sure we have enough to get a great fit and seal. You can see here RJ's checking to make sure the silicone is all the way around. Now we have to move on to getting rid of the excess. So we use the wet finger method. I will warn you, especially in the state of California, it's wise to use a glove. It says so on the instruction manual, and it can prevent any harmful contaminants entering your body. In this case, we don't have a glove, so we're making do, but I would seriously use one. Now here you see RJ found a little low spot, so before he continues with his finger, he's going to run a little silicone in, put the cap back on, keeping it fresh. And we have just a bucket here with water for the sponge and his finger. So these sinks are not hooked up right now. See how he's running around? And this makes a pretty darn good seal. Cleaning off the excess again. Remember, every morning when you pull this handle, you want a perfect fit. This is what we're going for.
Gap up front. And on the side, got a big air gap there and a little air gap there.
Now you can see again, this isn't easy because we don't have a sink that's perfectly flush. So we get some gaps. We have to go back over. Like we said before, any job worth doing is worth doing right. So this isn't going to be easy. You're going to have to go back over it, get it filled up.
Good job, RJ.
It's nice to have a two-man team here because Jim spotted the gaps. Ralph's pretty busy trying to get this thing fit perfectly. Now they work together and you have a perfect sink.
Take the easy part first.
Now we're starting with the sponge. Singing's optional. We recommend a little light music. Typically Johnny Cash is what makes us work better. You can see here,
It's time for a bottle of wine.
we're not getting all the silicone up the first time. So RJ's going back, cleaning that sponge off, and he's hitting it again.
Where's the wine?
Nice job, RJ.
I'll get some wine pretty quick and we'll need to strike.
RJ's here is 77 years young. With the fiscal cliff approaching and cuts on Social Security and Medicare, he can't afford to take any days off. Again, you see we have some excess. Picking that up. Then you got to clean that sponge off. It's never easy.
That's the wife's duties.
All joking aside, you can see it's all men here working away. The ladies are having fun downstairs. This sink has to get in, or else the boss is going to be quite mad. Still got excess, so we're going back to the sponge, getting it cleaned off. So we got a lot of silicone underneath there, but if you don't have a lot, then you got a rocky sink, so you got to put up with one to get the other. Just putting a traditional sink in that's completely plumb is a much easier task. You just set the sink in, run the silicone around. But now what we're doing is basically making up for imperfections in the sink or the countertop. No one's at fault here. We're not pointing fingers. Now you can see RJ is almost winning this battle. Most of the silicone is up. We've got some white water now because there's a lot of silicone that's extra when you do a job like this. But the net result is two sinks that are close to perfect. You could never tell they rocked. The only people who know are the ones who put the sink in. And we're not telling anybody. So we basically have a completed job here. Now the last thing is we're not even going to hook up any hoses or any drains because we want these sinks to sit for 24 hours and this silicone to get nice and settled in before we do any more work. This kind of thing is more touchy. So it's important that you're real careful once you get this set to just let it dry for 24 hours. Go do something fun, watch the NFL or whatever you want to do, but don't be messing around with the rest of the sink and ruin your seal. That's all we have. For any questions, you can send an email